Hello good people and welcome back. If you've stumbled upon this video or clicked it intentionally because you happen to be stuck below 1200 at chess.com, rapid that is, well, the good news is you clicked the right video. Now this series of advice may also be helpful over the board if you plan on having a classical chess career and want to play with real chess pieces. Welcome to Friday Chess Improvement. Let's hit it. So step number one, maintain a solid pawn structure. Let's just say if 1000 ELO chess and below are chaotic, 1200 and below are still, well, like the Wild West. So how do you rise above this madness? What you can do to get ahead is try to take care of your pawn chain, your pawn structure. So in the event that if you don't get to win by tactical means in the first 20 moves and you don't crush your opponent, you'll have an easier time defending the endgame. And usually that's how you prevent yourself from losing points and or how you reap the benefits of a better pawn structure. Let's illustrate. 1200, sometimes people try not so mainline ideas, and it's not even that they don't remember what to do, it's just you have to occupy the center somehow, either with bishop to c4 or knight to c3, or maybe a push here. But instead, people play moves like knight to a3, which, well, a knight in the rim is dim, but also it can just get captured. And after takes, sure, maybe you have this idea, but in general, you now have a shattered pawn structure, whereas black has this solid setup. So if, say, b7 is attacked, you can simply just push here, and all the pawns are harmonious. Now, it doesn't look very threatening right now because it's still in the opening phase, but say after knight to f6 you have to defend that. Now you either defend it with your queen to e2 or push here, but now look, your bishop is encased. So say after d3, consequence not so big, maybe some restrictions even though you have the double bishop pair, but now imagine the same broken pawn structure in this position. In this position, black has the light squared bishop and white has nothing but a broken queenside pawn structure. Or this position, black is up this long range attacker, the light squared bishop, but also this pawn is weak because nothing defends it, well, behind it that there couldn't be because it's the original square. And this pawn is definitely weak, especially because the rook is still in the original file there. So say after rook to a6 hitting on this, there's physically no way by the rules of chess that you can defend a3. And say after that move, this is weak. You can try to defend it, but then you drop this. So now after, say, knight to e1 defending that, well, your position is really, really passive as white. And then just king moves that way, trying to get to the center. This is very bad for white there. And these are kind of the ideas that don't make a lot of sense as a 1200. But if you double your pawns early without compensation and or the ability to undouble them, you run into these issues. Yeah, not good. And the last one, the last example is something as simple as this. It's black to play and will not win. Black is up a pawn which is solid in this kind of positions. Knight to c6, just activating the knight. But then white plays knight to d4, which is an interesting move. Because after this move, black played e5. Why is it a terrible positional idea in terms of protecting your pawn structure? Because of knight takes on c6, and after that, white has a light squared bishop, which is great because this is now quite an open position, but look at this pawn structure, shattered. And with two rooks on the board, something like rook to c3, this is totally indefensible. All black needed to do was avoid the trade or take the knight there. now takes, and this is coming. Now you can't defend both. You hit, after that, takes here, and then if you can get the knight out, now bishop to c4 hitting on f7. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a big deal at that level, but if you don't take care of your pawn structure and double it, you allow a lot of targets for your opponents, and you can't defend them as the person who has the doubled pawns. So let's get to step 2. Step number 2 to get over 1200 and stay there and go beyond is that each move you make must create a threat. To be clear, most 1200s and under games don't really quite have positional subtlety. More often than not, at least. In fact, even at the Grandmaster level, the Anatoly Karpovs, the Vladimir Kramniks, the Petrosians, and the former world champion and still phenom Magnus Carlsen, they're all enigmatic because they play with positional chess in mind, and it's difficult to understand like their play even amongst their peers because they try to win with maneuvering and just small advantages that you don't get to see until it's realized. So as a 1200, hoping at least that you get there, your hope to improve yourself is instead to maximize your tactical chances. And how you do that is by developing your pieces fast, but also every single time you move, there is a threat that you create for your opponent, so your opponent has to defend. And it also means that there's purpose to your play. All your moves tend to create initiative by threatening, and threatening either another piece or a pawn or a square that is important to your progress. Either that or you run the risk of, well, not making any sense out of your game, which is not great. Let's illustrate. So here's an example of how to always create a threat, or rather, the idea of creating a threat must be in your playbook consistently. Here, white has control of the 7th rank. Temporarily, of course, black can challenge that, but now you have the next move. Rook to d7. You're threatening to take this pawn. But also now you've doubled your rooks there, and you have twice the control there in the middle. So say after black tries to move a5 preventing, what's the next move here? Well, because you have a light squared bishop and that f7 square is eyeing the king, why don't you pin it? That's another threat. So the problem is now this is indefensible. This is attacked once, twice, and 3 times, and the king is pinned. So either the king moves away or you try desperately to get rid of that rook. So now you just take that pawn for free. And after, say, rook takes, after that defense, there's a nice move here which threatens to take that, and that's rook to b8 you have to take. After that, you don't just go here because then that can be defended. You threaten that pawn with rook to d5. Now the bishop can't defend it. Another threat. After that, you threaten to take, and there's nothing to defend it. You'll just scoop it, and it's game over. Hopefully. So here's another example. This is a very simple, but actually very nice, pretty example of every time you move in the game, you have to create a threat. In this position, this is an open game where all of, well, basically, there's a light squared bishop that's being threatened. I believe black just played a knight to a5. Looks, I don't know, not great, because you're threatening to take this away, but it has a lot of escape squares. But because of that move, black is actually done for in this game because white creates threats on a diagonal. Can you find a winning move? And in this position, if you haven't paused it, bishop to d5 finishes the game. And you might be wondering why, but then you also might have realized that the knight has no escape squares. You've created a counter threat which can't be defended. And say after g5, you simply push. Can't go anywhere. See, so little things like that. You can always create threats in chess. There's a lot of defensive and attacking resources, but I stuttered there. But as a 1200, you should find ways to say, create a threat on top of that threat, and see what happens. You're going to win a lot more games. So step 3 is to level up your tactics. In my previous video of how to break to 1000 ELO at chess.com, I focus heavily on the advice of upping one's tactics. Well, the same applies to breaking a 1200 barrier. It's not actually very far off. I recommend tactical drills, especially to improve your pattern recognition, but also for 3 reasons. 1, it prevents you from falling into simple tactical traps. What I mean are skewers, forks, back rank checkmates, and for the second reason, it allows you to spot fatal tactical errors from your opponents. Now imagine if you can shorten the game from, say, instead of playing 55 moves down to the last pawn, you win on the 31st move because you spotted a back rank mate or a queen and a bishop battery, and you just needed to remove a defender, or potentially a smothered mate. Imagine at that level that you spot it, you finish the game, you save resources for your brain for the next game. And finally, more pattern recognition drills via tactics tends to automatically improve your calculation. If at 1000 level you can calculate 1 to 2, 1 to 3, aim for pushing it to up to 4, 5, 6. Not only will you improve your pattern recognition, but your calculation, which will be very useful for other aspects of the game, whether it's going through an unfamiliar opening or endgame drills. They are blood brothers. They help you to some degree. The carryover is impressive if you can calculate further. Let's illustrate. So speaking of tactical vision, here is an example of really thinking ahead and just crushing it with tactics. This might be more advanced than a 1200, but as a person who wants to break 1200, this is the kind of mentality and pattern recognition I ask you to do so you can win more games. And in this position check, it looks like black, well, the black's king is in the middle, has both rooks and 2 bishops. And a little bit of a kind of idea here is, if this is a double puzzle, if it was black to move because of the cutoff here, and the idea here, black will actually win this, but as white, I'd like you to take the helm here and find a crushing tactic, thinking 3, 4 moves ahead as to how to disconnect these rooks, because right now you can't gobble it. But as white here, thinking ahead, it's a lovely move. Give it a shot. White wins with rook to d7. And the idea is, well, it looks really stupid, but it's not. If the king avoids the trade, now both rooks are disconnected, so that's a checkmate. But if bishop takes, because of the pawn wedged there, you have this lovely queen to f6, which doesn't lead to checkmate, but also pushes the king back to e8, at which point they're not connected anymore. So check. King goes down, and this is a hopeless position for black. That's a lovely way to end the game. So calculating in this position that the king is in the middle, all its forces are dispersed, you have a pawn here, there's ideas of how to cut the king off and then disconnect these 2 rooks and finish by winning both rooks. Here's another and a final example. It's white to play and win. White has a battery there, a light squared bishop, and ideas potentially on the open file here. There is a way to force material loss for black. And let's look at the variation. I can assure you firsthand that queen to h8 is not winning because there's an exit square. And this is what you need to calculate. Queen to h8, king to f8, f7. It looks like you have a check here, but then there's block. So let's just say queen to h8, king moves down, you give a check on f1, now blocks. Your attack is done. This is threatened. Well, you can't take it with that, but your queen is on prise as well, although being defended, which means if you trade it, the attack will fizzle out. And this is a knight outpost. This is a nice outpost for the knight, so that's not the winning move. The winning move is the ridiculous rook to a8, disconnecting the queen and the king, even though you sacrifice the rook, because then the next move means you can't defend it, and you have to take the rook somehow. So after that, take the queen. There's a counter sacrifice, because after it takes, knight to f4 is a fork. But between this and a really raging queen in an open position, this is advantage white, by the way. So yeah, a little complex, but this is the kind of mentality you need to break through 1200. And you guys can do it, I know for sure. Well, everyone, I hope that was helpful. I hope you got something out of the 3 steps to get to 1200, break it, and stay there and go beyond. I will be creating more videos every Friday for chess improvement. I myself am trying to improve, trying to get past the 2100 on, well, that would be chess.com, and at levelupchess, another way to get past 2200, hopefully. I'm reading books and then doing drills, and someday I'll go back to classical chess. So let's enjoy the journey together. Double peace.